Hey guys, today I'll show you a horror thriller film named Uncontained. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. The movie begins in a post-apocalyptic world overrun by zombies, where the virus has been raging for 6 years. A brother and sister have somehow managed to survive all this time in a remote villa, a feat not many could accomplish. The dangers they face are far greater than one might imagine. One day, a couple drives up to the villa. The boy, Jim, comes out to greet them, holding what looks like a toy gun. The man immediately asks where their parents are. Seeing Jim's silence, he just smiles and says they'll see him next time. That night, Jim and his sister lock all the doors and windows. Outside, a few zombies linger, waiting for an opportunity to break in at any moment. Morning comes without incident. Jim checks the bullets in his magazine, revealing that it's not an ordinary toy gun after all. As the siblings are playing outside as usual, the same pickup truck from yesterday return. This time, the couple's attitude is much more forceful. They again demand to know where the parents are. Jim lies, claiming they've gone to town for supplies, but such a simple trick can't fool two adults. The woman puts on a friendly smile, pointing out that the town is hours away. She says they can protect Jim and his sister until their parents get back. Seeing the house is well stocked with supplies and even has a working refrigerator, the couple decides to stay. The man says he's going to hide the truck, suggesting they are on the run from someone. During the night, Jim overhears the couple talking. It seems they are quite pleased with the place. For safety, he takes his sister into a secure panic room, one of the secrets to their survival. The next morning, the man has already made breakfast, clearly making himself at home. The boy remains calm and says something strange. It will be over before you know it. As night falls, Jim mysteriously asks if it's time. Their dog sniffs him and gives a barely perceptible nod. Jim quickly grabs his sister and locks her in the panic room. Downstairs, the couple is still getting cozy, unaware of the impending danger. The woman excuses herself to use the restroom, where she spots zombies outside the window. She quickly turns off the light, thinking she's hidden, but the door behind her suddenly opens. The man soon senses something is wrong. He grabs his pistol and investigates, only to find his girlfriend lying on the floor covered in blood. Then, a figure darts out and attacks him. The couple is never seen again. Afterwards, Jim and his sister are back to playing outside as if nothing happened. Clearly, this isn't the first time they've dealt with intruders. Meanwhile, a long-haired man is walking through the forest. He spots several traps in the snow and follows the trail to the villa. Suddenly, a little girl appears before him. While he's distracted, he feels a sharp pain in his neck. He's been hit with a tranquilizer dart fired by the boy, Jim. This is clearly another one of his survival skills. When the man, Dan, awakens from his stupor, Jim is already waiting, gun in hand. Through questioning, Dan explains that he's a special forces soldier just passing through on his way north to find his wife. Jim seems a bit taken aback. He senses this man is different. Dan doesn't want their food or medicine. He only wants his weapons back. Jim seizes the opportunity to make a deal. He asks Dan to help generate power for the villa. When Dan asks where their parents are, Jim, no longer lying, says his father was a scientist who has been gone for a long time, and his mother is an agent with the Security Bureau who left on a mission a few days ago and should be back soon. Dan is stunned to see that the villa is powered by a treadmill. Suddenly, a zombie approaches the window. Without thinking, Dan grabs a weight plate, rushes outside, and attacks the zombie. After killing it, he returns covered in blood, only to be yelled at by Jim, who explains that the glass is specially made and bulletproof. Even a horde of zombies couldn't break through. Despite the scolding, Dan feels pity for the siblings and gets on the treadmill to help power the house. After a long night, Dan is nearly exhausted. Jim's sister walks over, circles him, declares that he stinks, and runs away. Dan takes a shower, and the sister thoughtfully brings him a hairpin. Meanwhile, Jim has already left the villa. Every morning he checks the surrounding traps, an effective way to keep zombie hordes at bay. Sure enough, another lively zombie has been caught. Back at the villa after breakfast, Dan explores the mother's workspace. Besides photos, he finds a car key. He rushes to the garage, but unfortunately the car is broken. A room in the corner catches his eye. Thinking it's a tool shed, Dan is about to enter when Jim, returning from his patrol, sternly stops him. After more than a day together, the siblings have determined Dan isn't a threat, so they don't sleep in the panic room. Curiously, though, Jim handcuffs himself before bed. Near dawn, Dan is woken by footsteps outside. It's Jim going on patrol again. He follows him to the trap from yesterday, where the zombie is still waiting to be dealt with. As Jim considers what to do, Dan suddenly appears. He instinctively assumes the trapped zombie is Jim's mother and prepares to put her out of her misery, but is once again stopped at gunpoint by the boy. Frustrated, Dan returns to the villa and opens the forbidden room. Inside, he finds a blanket on the floor and the walls covered in deep scratch marks. It appears to be a place for confining a zombie, which only strengthens Dan's suspicion. Just then, the roar of a vehicle is heard outside. More survivors have arrived, and they clearly have hostile intentions, circling the villa with their guns drawn. Dan, unarmed, doesn't dare make a move, while Jim, returning from his patrol, can only watch from a distance. His sister stands at an upstairs window, waving. Just as a raider is about to spot her, Dan rushes in and pulls her away. Finding the doors and windows locked, the raiders eventually get in their vehicle and leave. After this incident, Jim's trust in Dan grows, and he returns his weapons. Dan feels it's time to leave, but finds himself strangely reluctant. That night, the voice of his wife calls to him in a dream. When he wakes, Dan makes a momentous decision to take Jim and his sister with him on his search. This way, he can fulfill his own goal while also looking after them. However, Jim flatly refuses, insisting on staying to wait for his mother. Suddenly, a commotion erupts outside. The raiders from yesterday have returned with more men and have taken the sister hostage. As the two sides are in a standoff, gunshots ring out from a distance, and two raiders fall. It's Jim's mother, a special agent. While rushing forward to save the girl, Dan is shot in the chest by a raider and collapses. Sometime later, Dan wakes up. His chest wound is healed, and he is tied up with a rope. Upstairs, Jim and his family are waving at him. Puzzled, Dan enters the house, where the mother, Lena, explains everything. She tells him that ordinary infected lose their higher brain functions, driven only by the basic need to feed. However, there's a special type of infected who retain their human consciousness but inherit the zombie's physical advantages, including the ability to heal from any injury. The only drawback is that after a severe injury, or periodically, they enter a frenzied state where they are no different from a regular zombie. Dan has a revelation. He must be one of these special infected. Lena nods, confirming it. Otherwise, he would have died from the gunshot instead of entering a brief frenzy and waking up the next day as if nothing happened. Lena then reveals an even more shocking fact. Her son, Jim, is a special infected just like him. It was Jim who killed the couple that night in a frenzied state. That's why he handcuffs himself every night. Lena explains that their dog has been specially trained. It can detect the subtle scent change that signals an impending frenzy. Dan then understands that the room with the scratch marks is where Jim is confined during his transformations. Suddenly, they hear another vehicle. Lena goes out with her daughter to deal with a group of militiamen led by a white-bearded man. It seems she knows the leader. He explains that his daughter ran off with some young punk, and as a worried father, he's been searching everywhere. Lena promises to inform him if she sees them, and the man reluctantly leads his group away. That night, Dan asks about the villa's origin. Lena explains that the National Security Agency anticipated the zombie outbreak and built thousands of such shelters in remote locations. All materials are reinforced, and they're equipped with power generation systems, making them completely self-sufficient. Dan feels a pang of regret, thinking Lena should have warned more people, potentially saving more lives. But Lena just shakes her head helplessly. She reveals that both of her children were born with a congenital heart defect. Their father, a biologist and one of the first scholars to discover the zombie virus, saw that his son wouldn't live past the age of 3. In a desperate move, he injected Jim with the virus, inadvertently turning him into a special infected. Tragically, the father was bitten by his own son during a frenzy. He became a regular zombie, and Lena was forced to kill him herself. Hearing this story, Dan is filled with admiration for the mother's strength. He feels a growing desire to contribute to this small family, and in turn, Lena's family begins to rely on the steady presence of this man. One day, the dog gives 2 sudden barks. Jim knows he is about to go into a frenzy. After he's locked in the room, agonizing screams soon follow. Lena's heart is torn apart, but she can only wait silently outside the door. Dan steps in to take her place, a small comfort that shows the benefit of having another man in the house. However, in an unexpected tragedy, the sister suddenly collapses while playing outside. Lena realizes her heart condition has taken a turn for the worse. With their limited medical resources, there's no way to treat her. Dan suggests infecting her like her brother, but Lena firmly refuses. She says her son's case was a 1 in a million anomaly, and he has suffered immensely to survive. In the end, they decide to let the sister pass away peacefully. After Jim's frenzy subsides, the family spends one last moment together with the sister. With this, Dan decides it's time to leave. Despite pleas from Jim and Lena, he remains determined and sets off on his journey. With two people suddenly gone, the house feels terribly empty to Lena and her son. Meanwhile, in a nearby forest, the white-bearded man's militia discovers the truck his daughter's boyfriend had hidden. In a twist of fate, it turns out the couple who tried to take over the villa were the very people he was searching for, his daughter and her boyfriend. The closest residence to the hidden truck is Lena's villa, so the white-bearded man decides to go back and search it again. Asleep in the snow, Dan is awakened by the sound of many footsteps. When the noise fades, he emerges to find numerous footprints, with vehicle tracks leading directly toward Lena's villa. A strong sense of unease washes over him and he quickly heads back, only to see from a distance that the villa has been taken over by the militia. Inside, the white-bearded man is interrogating Lena about his daughter's whereabouts, as his men have found some of her belongings in the house. Now, Lena has no way to explain herself. Meanwhile, Dan quietly bypasses the guards and successfully infiltrates the villa. He finds Jim hiding in the kitchen and, after learning the number of enemies, pulls out his weapon. He becomes a phantom in the dark, systematically eliminating the guards. But when he reaches the main hall, he's cornered and held at gunpoint. In a move that baffles everyone, Dan takes his own blade and slits his throat. The militiamen stare in stunned disbelief. Only Lena understands his intention. She quietly leads her son out of the hall. Sure enough, it isn't long before Dan enters a full-blown, frenzied state. Like an unkillable titan, he instantly takes down the white-bearded man and his remaining crew. This time, however, Lena doesn't tie him up beforehand. She and her son can only flee the villa. The roars from Dan's rampage attract countless zombies from the surrounding area. When Dan wakes the next day, the villa has been completely overrun and torn apart. On a table, he finds a letter from Lena. She and her son have taken a car and headed north. If fate allows, perhaps they will meet again. Dan smiles, picks up the sister's favorite doll, and continues his journey north. This is Daniel CC Movie Channel. Stay safe and enjoy your day.